Regal In Discretion by North Star.
And the next thing I knew, the shelves were completely cleared. Thankfully, the window was open at the time. Rainbow Dash would have been picking up broken glass as well as books.
The two ponies shared a laugh at yet another amusing incident at the Ponyville Library. The early morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of the corridor, casting a rainbow-colored glow on both mares. Breakfast was a recent memory, and Princess Celestia and Twilight Sparkle were sharing a light walk through the castle to work it off.
Was she injured at all?
The princess asked.
Not even a scratch. I'll never know how she doesn't get hurt doing all these stunts more often. She certainly is gifted, that filly. Not gifted enough to avoid spending her entire morning nap time reshelving. It wouldn't have been fair to Spike to make him clean up after her.
A moment's silence passed as they walked, reaching the end of the corridor. Student and teacher passed through a doorway to a vast courtyard in the heart of the castle. Nearby was a tall, slender tower, the home of the co-regents of Equestria. Twilight had only been in this tower a few times in her years in Canterlot, always afraid of intruding on her mentor's private life. It was with some trepidation that she followed Celestia into the very same tower.
And how are things with your special friend?
Twilight smiled despite herself.
Amazing. We do so much together. Talking, studying, going for walks in the woods. I'm still spending time with my other friends, of course. But I'm having so much fun. During last week's meteor shower, we had a picnic in the small clearing in the middle of Whitetail Wood to watch. Just the two of us. It was so wonderful. And I've been promised a private dinner when I get home tomorrow evening.
She blushed as she realized how much she was babbling. Celestia only smiled.
I'm very happy for you, Twilight. You have learned so much about friendship in the past few years. Now you have an opportunity to apply what you have learned in an even greater way. It does feel more like just than friendship. We're very good friends, but it feels different. We've done things together I would never have dreamed of doing with the others. Please go on. Well, it's funny you should ask. Never mind. No, go on.
Twilight's blush deepened. She had to ask, no matter how embarrassing it was. She only hoped the princess would not think any less of her.
The thing is, I could use some advice. It's really embarrassing. But I can't really ask any pony else. I'm listening. Well, you see, we went back to the library after the meteor shower was over. It was late, and I suggested spending the night.
She looked down at her hooves, dreading the thought of making eye contact.
It didn't make sense to put the guest bed together when my bed was big enough for both of us. You can probably figure out the rest. I see.
Celestia replied.
Thing is, you see,
Twilight began, sounding more like Fluttershy than herself.
when we were, you know, yes.
The princess suppressed the urge to finish the story on her student's behalf. She had a good idea of what Twilight was about to say, but did not want to interrupt. The filly had to say the words herself. It was the only way she would learn.
Well, we were together, and my horn, went off.
The last words were spoken with a whisper. Celestia was silent for a moment, as if delicately considering her response.
That must have been embarrassing for you.
She finally replied sympathetically.
Not half as embarrassing as explaining to Spike why his basket was full of flowers the next morning.
Twilight let out a nervous laugh.
I can imagine.
The elder Alicorn giggled.
I couldn't figure out how to turn the flowers back into his pillow and blankie, either. I don't know what it is about me and accidental spells turning things into plants. At least rarity like the flowers.
It was at this point that Twilight noticed that they were right outside the door to Princess Celestia's private quarters. The princess opened the door and led Twilight into the reception area outside her bedroom.
Wait here.
Celestia instructed.
Make yourself comfortable.
Her bedroom door opened and she passed through it.
Make yourself comfortable. Easy for you to say.
Twilight thought. She followed her mentor's instructions as closely as she could, settling into a lounge chair. A moment later, the princess emerged with a small, age-blackened iron ring. She passed it from her magical field to Twilight's. The violet unicorn examined it carefully.
Put this on your horn first. It reduces the potency of your magic, but it does not restrict it completely. Deliberate spells may be cast with some extra effort, but it will prevent accidental spells from being cast. Wow! Thank you, Princess. But... No buts. It's just that I'm kind of surprised that you have this.
Celestia closed her eyes, a neutral expression on her face. The winged unicorn stepped over to a shay across from Twilight, settling herself on it.
You must understand something, Twilight. My elevated position in equestrian society aside, I am still made of flesh and bone like any pony else. It is with the same capacity for my feelings and emotions. I feel joy, sorrow, anger, and yes, desire. I've had my fair share of lovers.
A guilty grin passed onto her face as the memories came flooding back.
Some would say more than my fair share. I never realized.
Twilight blushed.
What, did you really think created the Everfree Forest?
Student and teacher alike shared a laugh at this unexpected confession.
I can't believe you said that.
Twilight said between gasps of breath.
It's hardly something I'm going to include in my history books. Goodness, if historians were aware of all my indiscretions, we would need at least another Star-Swirled Bearded Wings worth of books to record them. Princess?
Twilight was sure her face was redder than the apples adorning her friend Applejack's flank. To her surprise, however, she did not feel as much discomfort as she had when the conversation started. The invisible barrier between teacher and student that she had felt since fillyhood did not feel impenetrable anymore, and the unicorn did not quite know how to approach the situation. Matters of romance, she finally selected as a definition, were not the usual topic of discussion with one's teacher, but if she was not a student, what was she? Celestia smiled at her young charge. She rose from her seat and approached her student, leaning down to draw her into a hug.
There's no shame in growing up, Twilight. Remember that. I will. You have so much to be proud of. Since we first met your entrance examination, you have grown and matured into a fine young mare. I am very proud of you. Wow! Thank you!
Twilight replied ecstatically.
And if you ever need more advice or have any questions, do not hesitate for a moment to ask. After a life as long as mine, there is very little that will come as a surprise.
Celestia loosened the hug to look at her student.
As I said, you have grown up. Regrettably, you will not be my faithful student much longer. I hope that once the momentous day comes, we will remain in contact with each other, not as student and teacher, but as friends.
Friends. The idea of being friends with the pony she admired more than any other had always seemed like such an impossibility, something she would only achieve when she had nothing left to learn and could consider herself an equal with the princess, as if she ever could.
I would like that, Princess. And I hope that when you visit next time, you will not come alone. It's a deal, friend.
The end.